What is up, guys? Justin here with another video, uploading every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Today I wanted to go over the triathlon I did last weekend, September 11th, give you guys kind of a rundown of my thoughts, how the event went, my results, and some of the lessons I've learned and the events I've got going forward for the next year or so. So it was a sprint distance triathlon. It was called the Patriots Triathlon Festival. I'm wearing the shirt here. So Saturday was the half Ironman distance and the Olympic distance, and then Sunday was the sprint distance. So a sprint distance triathlon is 750 meter swim, 20-kilometer bike, and a 5K run. I will put my swim up, my transition bike, transition run from my Garmin results, and then I'll post my chip time as well. The chip times are a little off from the Garmin times, just based on when I lapped my watch. But yeah, the distance wasn't a crazy challenging distance for me as far as I knew I could complete it. The point of this sprint triathlon for me was just to get out and get a triathlon on the books, as well as to practice transitions and see how a race runs and see how I feel getting on the bike from the swim and on starting the run from the bike. So for me, mentally, this triathlon kind of, even though it wasn't crazy difficult for me, marked a new athletic chapter in my life. So I ran cross country primarily in school. That was my main sport. And I also ran track and played basketball for a little bit. So for middle school and high school, my whole athletic life was sports. And I graduated high school and really just trained for a few local 5Ks and for joining the Navy. And then after that, my training has just been for the military. And so this is the really first time I've done anything for me since high school, really, or even then it was for sports. So this is the first time in my athletic life that I see I've done something for me. So since middle school, I've always wanted to do an Ironman. So I've always been interested in triathlon, always been interested in longer endurance stuff. So, this has been a long time coming. So for me, even though the triathlon wasn't very difficult and wasn't, anything mentally challenging that I didn't know I could complete, it really marks a new transition into this chapter of my life of, sports for myself, not for a job and not for a school. So, it had a lot of meaning to me. It was really important to me. So that's going to lead into later in the video when we talk about the events that I've got coming up. But for now, let's get into the triathlon. So first, the race. It was really well run. The company that puts on all these triathlons, there's a lot of them around here. They do a really good job, and they really make the race fun for people that have done triathlons for a long time, or if it was your first triathlon. So it was a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. I didn't realize sprint triathlons were so huge. I thought they were just kind of the smaller distance after, the main event is, Ironman and half Ironman distances. But there was a lot of people there. There was big colleges there. So I'll show you guys a little bit of race footage here and there from the official race footage. I didn't get a ton of footage of myself. Hannah was there to take some videos. There's just some videos of me in transition though. My final goal was just to finish. My A goal was to finish in under 136. The reason I wanted to finish in under 136 is because I had just Googled what the average male time in the US is for a sprint triathlon, because I had no idea how to pace myself. I had no idea how long it was supposed to take. And it said 136. So that was just my goal, and I was pretty confident I could hit that. Anyways, into the swim. So I was a little worried about starting too far forward. They did a time trial start. So you just kind of got in where you thought you fit, and then they sent 2 people every 3 seconds into the water. So for me, I kind of went to the back of the middle of the pack. I knew I was a stronger swimmer. I've swam in the open water before. I was comfortable. I wouldn't freak out, but I didn't want to get run over by people. So I ended up starting a little too far back, and I had to pass some people. And so that slowed me down a little bit. And I had to take some of the turns wide to pass some people, so I swam just a little bit farther than the 750 meters. For this race, I was actually somewhat worried about sighting because I haven't swam in the open water in 3 or 4 years at this point. So every 1 or 2 breaths I was sighting, which meant that my head was coming out of the water, meant I was kind of swimming uphill. You swimmers, you'll know what I'm talking about. You're supposed to swim downhill is what they say, and not have your legs below your upper body because that's going to slow you down. So that slowed me down some, and then having to pass some people slowed me down some. So I think my final pace was 2:17 per 100 yards, which in the pool, my pace is about 150 per 100 yards. So, either way, that's not world-class times, but I definitely need to work on my sighting. They had yellow buoys for the turns and orange buoys for the guiding. So my sighting was spot on. I hit the buoys every time, but it just wasn't efficient. I wasn't fast. So I definitely need to get out in the open water, practice swimming straight without sighting, so I don't have to sight every breath or every other breath. And then for the next triathlon, I'll also move up in the pack, so I'm not having to pass so many people. Anyways, got out of the water. The run to transition was 200 or 300 yards. It was actually somewhat far. So I ran up there. I took my time in T1. I wanted to make sure I had everything first triathlon. So I got all my bike stuff on, and then I took a second and looked at everything. I was like, all right, do I have all my bike stuff? I ran through a checklist, had everything. So I got out, went out for the bike, and got on the bike. There was a little mix up at the transition area where I passed the mountain line, got on my bike and went to go, and a guy in front of me was having some difficulty. So that slowed me down a little bit. So I think that's part of why the race chip time puts me at 16.7 miles an hour and my Garmin puts me at 17.5 miles an hour. The bike course was pretty flat. There was a few little hills, but it was mostly flat. The bike felt really good for the first half, and then we turned around and my hands started to go numb. So actually, I've got a bike fit rescheduled to go back in and look at the bike fit and see what's wrong there. Something's wrong with my form. I think my seat might be a little too high because no matter what I do, I can't, with the way the bike fit is now, I can't not put a ton of weight on my hands. So you're not supposed to put a lot of weight on your hands when you're cycling. So my hands were going numb. So really for the last half, I was focused on keeping my hands from going numb so I could still shift gears and use the brakes. And so I couldn't focus as much on speed. T2, I was pretty slow as well. I took my time. I put the bike up. I tied my running shoes. I didn't have elastic laces. That would have sped me up a lot. I double checked that I grabbed my race belt, grabbed everything, ran through a checklist, and then left out T2. And then the run was honestly pretty easy. I didn't push it crazy hard. I didn't red line. Again, I didn't really know how to pace myself for this race, and I wasn't trying to red line. I was just trying to beat 1 hour, 36 minutes and get that triathlon feel in. Mile 1, pushed it. Mile 2.1, I just kind of chilled. Hit the turnaround, kind of chilled, and then I hit that last mile and I decided to start picking people off. So I just pushed it, focused on the person in front of me. I'd pass them, focused on the person in front of me, pass them. And I would say I didn't really push it until the last half mile or so. Then I started to really push it because I looked down and saw I was around the 130 mark. So I knew I had to push it a little bit to get under 136. But I ended up coming in at 134.45. I'll post that up here again. I believe it was 134.45. 134.49 according to my Garmin. I'm not sure what the chip time got. Final thoughts on the event are, it was really well run. I had a lot of fun. So I'm, getting out of the water after the swim. I was fairly nervous before because I'd never done a triathlon before. But when I was swimming, it was a ton of fun. I got out of the water and honestly had the biggest smile on my face. I can't comprehend to you how happy I was to just finally have started a triathlon because I've wanted to do one for so long. And, like I said, this is mindset-wise, this was kind of marking a new chapter in my athletic life. So it was a really big deal to me. So I was pumped. The second I got out of the water, I said, I'm doing these for a long time. So that leads us into the next event. So what the next year looks like. So I've got some dates here. So this was really the end of triathlon season, at least open water triathlon season. And I'm not really interested in doing a pool triathlon. There is 2 more triathlons near me, but in this area, one's like 4 hours away. So I don't want to drive to that because I'd be driving a lot more than I would be racing. And the other one is a collegiate draft legal sprint. So in triathlon, you can't draft on the bike. You have to keep a distance. They do have draft legal triathlons where you can draft, and I don't want to deal with that because if you see accidents in like the Tour de France or any big cycling races, it's all where people were really close in drafting. One person like hit a rock or messed up, and then everybody kind of piled in. So I prefer not drafting. I'm not a super strong cyclist. I'm still not super comfortable with handling the bike, with eating and drinking on the bike. So I don't want to deal with that. I don't feel like that would end well for me. So I'm not going to do any more triathlons this year. I'm going to, in November, I'm going to be helping my buddy for his 100 mile. I'm going to be pacing him for the last 20 or 30 miles of his 100 mile. So that's the next event I've got coming up. Not really an event for me, but it is something I need to be trained for, right, to run that far. So that's November 12th. And then I'm probably going to throw in a half marathon over the winter just to do an event and have fun. But the big events I've got coming up, April 2nd, 2023, I've got a 60K trail race. So that's the next big event I'm training for. And then sometime between then and June, I'd like to throw in an Olympic distance try just for fun, not to race it again, just to get out, transition, have a good time, experience another distance. So I'd like to throw one of those in between April and June. And then all of this after the Olympic is really going to be dependent on what my coach says, on what Fergus says. So I've been talking to him about my goals. He just finished the double brutal. It's a double Ironman distance triathlon. So he's still kind of recovering from that. But when he's fully recovered from that, we're going to have a good conversation on the rest of this. But this is my plan right now. If this changes, it'll change based on Fergus's recommendations. And I'll let you guys know in another video. But in June, I would like to do a half Ironman distance, not necessarily Ironman branded, but a half Ironman distance to practice nutrition, hydration, see how I feel on these longer distances. So a half Ironman distance triathlon is a 1.2 mile swim, a 56 mile bike, and a 13.1 mile run, so a half marathon at the end. So definitely a respectable distance, definitely a hard distance, but I'd like to throw one in either in June or July, depending on how the schedule works out, just to practice everything. Again, not to redline, not to be a race, just to be like a training race. And then after that, my dad wants to do this thing called RAGRI in July. It's the 3rd week of July, and it's not a bike race, it's a 5-day bike ride across Iowa. So I think it averages out to like 60 or 70 miles a day. Some days you do 50 miles, you stay in the town, you eat, you sleep. Some days you do 100 miles to the next town, so it's from town to town to town. So that would be really fun. I'm really pumped for that, as long as it works out schedule-wise, but it looks like it should be able to work out. So that would be the third week of July, 5 days. And then August, nothing. And then September would be Ironman Maryland. So out of all of these events, the 60K is definitely happening and Ironman Maryland is definitely happening. Those are my A races for 2023. The rest of them are subject to schedule and everything, just training races to have fun. But Ironman Maryland is really the big one. So that's going to require a lot of training. I have a year from now to train for that. September 17th. So a year and 2 days to train for this. So it's happening in a few days. And then registration will open up shortly after that for the next year. So I'm going to register for that. So that's the biggest race for me. That is my most important race. And that's what I'm really excited for. I mean, I'm really excited for all of them, but that's the one that's, really important to me. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe. It helps the channel, helps me know what you guys like, and subscribing will let you see my future videos. So in the future, I'm planning on doing a series for the 60K. So one video out leading into the next video on 60K training. And then I'm also planning on doing a video on the Ironman training later next year. So one video leading in the next video on training for the Ironman. And that's all while keeping these hybrid goals, so strength goals, in line as well. Other than that, drop a comment down below if you liked the video, if you have any questions, and I will see you guys in the next video.